Right. Welcome to AD Talks again. I was about to call it Fuse Talks. Still used to that. I'm gonna welcome in Gizlek and who was stepping in for feeling.
It's Lorenthas.
Well, I've introduced them, so I allow them to say what they've been up to lately, RP wise or World of Warcraft wise, before we step into the conversation and what's new today as well. So, starting with Gizlek, I suppose. What have you been up to?
Well, hi. Personally, I haven't been up to that much bar doing Mage Tower challenges and off screen just preparing uh, the whole DM mentorship thing that I was planning.
Yeah.
I had to postpone it twice now for various reasons. Meanwhile, I'm already organizing an event, a monk tournament in Pandaria on June 16th. That's 2 or 3 weeks.
Alright.
It's 2 or 3 weeks away. Um, Other than that, yeah, there's going to be a shaman meeting in July, but we haven't set a date or location yet. As for the next rogue event, we don't know either, but it's probably going to be something similar to the Grimy Gully again, and open to non-rogues, of course.
Alright.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
What about a
Lots
new
of
guest?
lots of organizing, very little RP.
Okay. Well, I think that's all up on the forums. I can probably link it on the Discord and the actual forum thread as well. Well, what about our new guest? What do you RP? What have you been up to?
Okay. Yeah, okay, so I'm one of those filthy blood elf role players. And I'm sort of part of Oath of Silver, which is sort of this like mafia style crime guild. It's Theolin's guild. And we're kind of focusing at the moment on tavern nights, which is something we used to do way back when, but we've sort of brought back now because we've got an influx of new members and we're sort of building the guild up again. So we're focusing on tavern nights, which is basically in Silvermoon City, Wayfarer's Rest. The inn there on Wednesday nights. I think it's 10 p.m. server time. We basically just like run the bar, and people are free to like come and just engage in roleplay, casual, fun stuff. Yeah, that's about it.
Alright, before we go into today's topic, well, actually I should say the name of the topic before the idea of the challenge. We're doing character creation and progression, when you create a new character, tips that you give to people, do's and don'ts, all that kind of stuff. To fit in, because Anya mentioned last week, we should probably do something that interacts with the guests and viewers more, so challenges, maybe scavenger hunts or transmogs or whatever. To fit in with the theme today, we're going to try create a transmog using any items we pick up from dungeons through the streams. You can do that by yourselves, no auction house stuff, but it has to be surrounding the theme of like a merchant basically. So you have to create a merchant character throughout the stream, if you understand that.
Oh my gosh, okay. Sounds like fun.
Any questions about that before we move on?
So we're making a new character on the stream?
No, you can use whatever character you have now, but you just have to create a
Okay.
transmog and a small profile at the end
Okay.
surrounding a merchant theme basically.
Oh man, that sounds like fun. Okay.
So I'll be starting going through dungeons as you'll see as well, picking up items as well. Alright, moving on to the actual subject whilst we do that through the stream. Basic character profiling, what would you say about that really? Name, age, body, weight, height.
Personally, I think it depends on what you want to go for.
Yeah.
Because there are many different approaches to character design and character creation, just as there is sand in the sea, if you will. And one thing I'm personally doing is I'm keeping it really basic. So in terms of name, unless I have an idea for a name, I usually run it through the name generator. But in some rare cases, I just think of a name that is appropriate to the character archetype I'm creating. So, for instance, if I'm creating a demon hunter, I might go for a normal name. or I might take some inspiration from an NPC such as Lurmus Talipedes or Sin Dweller, and just say pick a name that sounds very like their names. In terms of age, it really depends on how I want to portray my character. Is it a young new starter upper? Is it an old fart? Has he had success in his life before or not? Um, Basically, what sort of archetype I'm aiming for? Am I aiming for a warrior? Am I aiming for a merchant, archer, thief? In terms of body shape, it depends. There are some people who like to portray a body shape that's personally not my kind of thing. I just keep it very basic in terms of body shape. If anything, I try to make it portray whatever the character archetype is. So a muscle mage is out of the question unless I specifically create a muscle mage.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of birthplace, that really depends on what basic character baseline I make it out to be. So say if I say create a non-goblin and say that character has a past in Booty Bay, and say it's always been an orphan, I might create a story around that. And if it's, say, for instance, an orc, I could say that orc's been born in the dead mines and its parents died, now it's an orphan. And fast forward 20, 30 years later, it's a grown-up. That's how I personally do it.
Well, what about
You know,
you?
I think to just like kind of like add to that point, I think, especially what you said about like body shapes and stuff like that, I think it's sometimes interesting to maybe go against the grain. Like you gave the example of like a muscle mage, right? Like that wouldn't happen. Like I personally think that that could maybe, you know, create some interesting plot points for a character. Like say there is a mage who spends all of his time studying and, you know, in books and stuff, but he is like really muscular and powerful and has scars that like that kind of creates hooks for other people to think about like, oh, why is this character, you know, very clearly a mage and yet looks like this, you know?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes like certain stereotypes exist and that's fine and everything and it's fine to play into those. But like also people shouldn't be afraid to sort of spin those on their head.
Yeah.
And
Although
then
I
again, you
have
know,
to say, not to interrupt
yeah.
you, but I have to say, it can be difficult for some races, say, to portray a wiry, non-muscly orc or non-muscular orc. That can be very difficult. I know this from experience. Or a
And I suppose
strong
we're
goblin.
also quite limited in terms of like the game models themselves because we can't actually pick different builds and you know not everyone reads TRP profiles. So I think we are quite limited that way, but you know there's room to play around there, I think.
You mentioned like quirks basically, so you know,
Mm.
the muscle mage. When do you think a quirk is too much?
I think perhaps maybe when the quirk is all of a character's personality, you know?
Yeah.
Like in real life we all kind of have our little things that we do and say and stuff like that, and then you know to maybe focus too much on one quirk and one quirk alone. But at the same time, you know, it's difficult because you don't want to give your character too many quirks because then they all get lost, you know? Um, so yeah, I think it's a difficult thing to do. But also
Narrowed
I
down to
I
three
re-
quirks.
yeah, I suppose. Like I mean, I don't want to say to people you are only allowed to have 3 quirks, but you know.
Just an example.
Yeah, actually, I read this thing once that actually gave some perspective to me, which was we shouldn't be afraid to give our characters quirks that don't fit into the sort of stereotype of what they're doing. So, like for example, like a demon hunter, right? They're you know big and mean and scary or whatever. Maybe this demon hunter really likes I don't know flower arranging. I mean, it doesn't fit within like the narrative of a demon hunter, but if you think about in real life, we all kind of have, you know, interests and things outside of what we do every day. So I think that kind of lends itself to almost a little bit more realism.
Yeah, it needs to be like more realistic. I think we have someone in our guild who has an alt demon hunt who likes to bake basically.
Oh, okay.
So that's
See, that's
something you wouldn't really expect a demon hunter to do, would you?
exactly.
There's nothing
exactly.
wrong with that. I keep telling people I want
Yeah.
to see an orc confectioner.
Oh man. Well, there's your merchant character for the stream.
I think when I say quirk becomes too much, is when you put too many quirks, I guess. As in,
Yeah,
you try
exactly.
and make your character very special, has all these kind of things to them that captures their other person's eye, but they can never establish it fully because they have too much. It's easier to
Yes,
have like
yes, exactly,
a few minor
exactly.
quirks to kind of extend on it and
Mm.
portray it for your roleplay.
Because
Because
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Because I mean, it gives you something to focus on, and it gives some other people who want to interact with you something to focus on. I mean, if there's too many quirks, if your character has hundreds of these like little tendencies and stuff like that, then there's nothing. Then they all kind of they get lost in it, and then it's I don't know. It dilutes your character. Should I say?
Unless your character deliberately is designed to get lost.
Yeah, unless your character's quirk is that they have a lot of quirks.
I'd actually like to see a character like that just doesn't know what they want to do, but does everything at the same time.
That would actually be quite fun, yeah.
On the topic of too much, someone did mention to me in chat earlier when you have too much titles.
Oh yes, and it's your little TRP pop-up takes up 3/4 of the screen.
Titles that aren't even exactly titles. I mean, a big one is mother, for example. I mean, when you're born into this world, your mother isn't given the title mother, is it? Like, not in the sense that it's
Yeah,
professional, is it?
exactly.
It's just something
Exactly.
that they are. Whereas a title is something like, I don't know, mercenary. I mean, you're a
Exactly,
mercenary,
exactly.
or you're a private, or a sergeant, or whatever. Are there any like
Exactly.
titles you've seen before that you don't really think should be labelled as a title?
I don't know. I guess the things for me that I've seen that shouldn't really be titles are things that don't add anything to your character's. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know the word.
Identity.
Yeah, that don't add anything to the identity. Like mother is, it might be you might be a mother, but it's not something that because the point of having these titles like in a TRP profile and stuff like that is to maybe like entice other people to interact with you and things like that. And no one's going to look at someone on the street and immediately know that they're a mother. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it adds nothing to enticing other people to role play with you. So I think that's where you draw the line. Like if it's not going to add anything significant, then leave it off.
I mean, you can bring up in casual conversation still, but it's not really
Yeah,
something
exactly.
that's entirely
Exactly.
centered around your roleplay. It's just something on the side, basically. I mean, imagine,
Exactly.
imagine nowadays if you're at a job and you come in and say, like, write on your CV, for example, and say, "Oh yeah, I'm a mother. My title, you know." I mean,
Yeah,
they're going to look at you and
exactly.
think, "What?
Exactly.
What's that got to do with that?"
Oh man, exactly.
But recruit, soldier, everything like that works because you can kind of establish on that, and this is your profession, this is what you do. You can talk about it. You can
Exactly.
more
Exactly.
center it more around your character because that is the main theme of your character, basically.
And I feel like soldier should rather go into the class bit rather than the
Yeah,
title.
I agree.
What I meant by that though is like the ranking, sergeant or lieutenant or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, that
maybe
makes
perhaps
sense. That's a title.
Yeah.
That's legit
yeah,
a title.
that's exactly it.
But I mean, at the end of the day, you also don't need like, I don't know, I've seen people before with like 10 titles and it kind of just fills up and
Yeah, it's just it's superfluous. You don't need it.
leaves me disinterested for one
Exactly,
thing.
exactly. Because as much as we all roleplay and as much as we love to read, no one wants to read that much, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes no one wants to read it all, which brings me back to the TRP, and it's kind of disappointing because sometimes there's pretty cool TRPs there, and they put out noticeable things about the characters that you might want to be interested in interacting with. I don't know, this character has a big bruise on her forehead or whatever. You want to know about it, you want to talk about it. That's something that entices you to interact with them.
Exactly, exactly. And it's sad when people don't pick up on things like that because they're like easily hooks and stuff that you can, draw people in with, and other people can be drawn to you. And then if no one's bothering to read these cheap TRP profiles, then it makes things more difficult. But that's why are listening to the stream so they know to read their TRP profiles.
Yeah.
As I said, personally, I don't even use TRP, so
Oh,
I'm
MRP.
immediately lost when somebody relies on the geez, what is it? What is that tab? First glance.
First
Oh,
glance, yeah.
yes, the first glance tab.
Everybody who relies on that has me lost because I can't even see it.
Oh man, you should switch to TRP, dude.
How about no?
Oh man, it's
He
understandable.
refuses.
Why?
The
Oh no, I
currently
mean,
is all I need is the currently, a name, a last name. That's all I need. And I mean the currently is just fluff for me. I can see a nickname. I can see.
don't you want to know more about the characters you're role playing with?
I do, but I'd rather interact with them.
I suppose that makes sense. Fair enough.
Alright, names. Names don't have to be super long either. I mean, last, first name, pretty much it.
Mm.
I guess some people also put nicknames in like commas or bracket, whatever they're called. Quotation marks even. Some people use nicknames and that's alright to have, I suppose. You can also put your title of lieutenant and sergeant in your name, because I believe that's an option on TRP. I don't know if it's the same
is,
option on the one Gizlek uses.
It is.
Is it?
It very much is.
Well, there you go. But yeah, it's something that doesn't need to be too long either. But at the end of the day, it's there, and you just use a name that surrounds your character personally. So, for example, if I'm an orc, I'm just gonna call myself, I don't know, Nasfrag, Blood Axe, whatever, and there we go. Pretty much it.
Yeah.
You just have to surround it around the race you're in. So, although speaking about races, there is the age. The age, what do you call it? The age section. That's it. The word I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Gosh, that's tricky.
That is something that always tends to bring up a debate, really, of how long a race lives.
'Cause the thing is, I suppose it's easier for races like, I don't know, orcs and goblins and Pandaren and stuff like that, who'd have very sort of similar to real life age spans.
Yeah.
But I mean, like as mostly a blood elf role player, it can get very heated talking about age and what age is appropriate and the difference between like emotional maturity and physical maturity and stuff like that, because we don't have much law on it, so we must just sort of, guess, which is sometimes it can be very limiting. In our guild, we tend to go with the assumption that blood elves age sort of similarly to humans up to about 20, and then it slows down and stuff like that, just because it's like not evolutionary sound to have like a baby that's for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how we tend to work it out. I don't know if that's particularly law friendly. I think I've done some reading in the forums and stuff, and that tends to be the general consensus with blood elves. I don't know much about any other kind of elf, to be honest, or any other long-lived races for that matter.
I do a mixture of if I'm certain that the race can be this age, this will be my age. If I'm not, I just put adult or
Yeah,
middle age,
that works.
and then I just play off as my character, not even remembering their age, because they just kind of not celebrate it. They just go on and live.
Because it becomes difficult, especially like, okay, I know I'm talking about solely blood elves here, but it especially becomes difficult when you're sort of, you have a set age for your character and you're role playing them as a sort of like, I don't want to use the word human equivalent because that's so kind of problematic, because there's no such thing as human equivalents and stuff like that. But if you're sort of like have a set, emotional maturity for your character and you've given them a set age, and then there's people that have characters that are either like, age, like physically aged wise, older, younger, but act far more mature, far less mature, and there's sometimes a disconnect. That can get a little bit tricky to navigate, but I mean, I've never really had that much of a problem with it, so.
So what you mean is like playing the age but not playing the actual age behind it?
Yeah, like I've seen, I don't know, blood elves who are maybe 150 and act like children, and it's, a little bit strange sometimes to, I mean, I suppose we can't really stifle other people's creativity, but there's a disconnect, Does what I'm saying try to make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but
Okay.
I'm trying to think, like counter argue that because I mean, there's a point where it becomes too childish, but then there's also a point where people are actually just generally jokey, you know, and
Yeah, I suppose so.
that's fine as well, you know, as long as you're not just being an idiot for the sake of being an idiot, you know. It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
as long as it's
That's
part of your character, you know, it's
yeah,
how they act
yeah,
out. I mean, maybe they just make jokes in the face of something scary to kind of, you know, deal with it, cope with it. It's their
yeah.
coping
No,
mechanism.
that's completely understandable because I mean, like everyone has different maturity levels,
Yeah.
as it is. So yeah. So I mean, I guess to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah. Um, do you often add personalities? Because me personally, I just allow that to play out through roleplay. Do you put a description on
Mm.
personalities when it comes to people actually reading, you know, about your character?
I think Gizlek should answer because I have been talking a lot.
I personally don't. I personally use the add-ons exactly for what they literally are designed for. So in the case of XRP, for instance, you have you have a background section and a history section. And what I do is I literally write out the character background in the background section and oh wait, description and background section, my bad. Background equals history. But I basically write out the character background in the history section or background section. And the description section just gets the description. And that's really all I need. And if a character has certain ways of acting or certain quirks, I just act it out personally. Because you usually can't see on first glance. Although what you can do is you can make certain emotes, like doing emotes to yourself or to your environment, if you will, and just express your character that way. It's an old technique that I think it was Dwoozle advised. Tardon did a basically rescue of that guide quite a couple of years ago. It's probably still somewhere in one of the stickies that what's his name? God, I forget.
I'm not sure who you're talking about.
Fine.
Oh, is it fine?
Yeah, the stick is fine made.
Oh, okay,
Still have
okay.
Dwoozle's guide somewhere, and you can find in Dwoozle's guide a lot of very useful tips in how to express your character through emotes and how to express very simple things such as temperature, boredom, weight. And by weight, I mean, for instance, if you're carrying a crate or something, you can still express that the crate is heavy for your character for emotes. Simple things like that is something you
Okay.
can do
Yeah,
to basically attract attention.
of course. All right. Before we move on character description, then I have to ask: when you make a new character, how do you go about creating it? Like, what's the first thing you do before you actually roleplay it? What do you establish beforehand, basically?
Well, I personally establish the basic outline of a character I want to create. Say, if I want to create a peon, I just go for that, and I base a name around a peon, and I give him, say, certain quirks. Say, what does he typically do? Does he have, I don't know, a smoking habit? Does he like carrying crates? Does he hate carrying crates? Does he complain a lot, or is he just a dutiful worker? That's basically the basic outline around which I create a character, and if it's appropriate, of course, a body build. But aside from that, I let personalities, traits, and everything else develop as a roleplay character.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I do much the same thing. Like I'll sort of come up with a initial idea of what I want from the character and like the type of like stories I want with the character, and obviously not set everything out beforehand, but like just get an idea of the things I want to do with this character first, and then just sort of have a sort of general idea of things like personality and, a vague history and background and stuff. But I usually find that the best way to let things like quirks and small little like, habits and things like that, that tends to, I find, develop better like through role play. So, I mean, it's usually, I think the safest bet is to have some kind of general idea of what you want from your character first. Because, I mean, sometimes it's tricky to, or I personally find it tricky to, when I make a new character, to like take that very first step and that very first in character appearance is always really challenging because you're still kind of finding your feet with the character. So it's a good idea to have a, general idea of what you want and what, the image that you're portraying with this character before you actually go and do anything. But the details can come later.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first impression is something I think about at character creation, so I don't have to do it later. Just gets it out of the way faster.
Pretty much a similar approach with me. I figure out the basic, like, okay, let's say I'm making an orc. He's going to be this young, hard-headed warrior trying to make a name for himself, something like that. And then through roleplay, I just kind of figure out through interactions how would he respond to this and kind of shape it from there, basically. Who's the guest talking at the moment? I've forgotten your name already. Lorenthas, was it?
Lorenthas.
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 I believe I roleplayed with you before, actually. Lorenthas.
Oh my gosh. Maybe you have. I don't remember.
Lorenthas and Gizlek. Yeah, it's pretty much that. Through roleplay, I tend to shape the character. I always have a basic understanding of the character, but it's through actual interaction that I tend to, further build upon that character. I know
I'm not the girl, by the way.
Yeah, you are. Through there are some people that tend to do this full planning scheme behind it, and that's fair enough. I mean, it's kind of their deal. But if it was me giving you a tip on how to design your characters, kind of give them a name, give them age, give them profession, throw them out there, and see how you go, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with sort of like planning everything out beforehand. I mean, if that's what works for you, then that works for you. But I think it's important to find what works best for you and your sort of process in your characterization.
I think personally it's just important to get around to roleplay the character.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you don't want to spend too much time in planning either.
Exactly.
When actually heading into the character, like character progression now, how do you go about progressing it? Do you do it all through events, or do you have casual roleplay kind of intertwine with the character as well? What affects your character and what builds upon their backstory and how they kind of perceive the world?
I personally go for casual story downtime and sometimes off-screen developments that explain a hiatus or absence.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, my go-to always the downtime times, the social RP times. I don't think, or well, it's not my sort of preference to develop a character through events, because what then happens is that your character depends on these events, and once certain events get cancelled or something out of character happens that jeopardizes whatever your character is involved in event-wise, you suddenly end up lost in having to either retcon or rehash your character, and that's not something you want.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, well, for me personally, I tend to maybe sometimes a little bit of both. The thing with my guild, Oath of Silver, is, it's not my guild, but it's the guild I'm in, is it tends to be very sort of freeform and very sandbox, and we don't really run tons of scheduled events, or nothing is particularly scripted in any way, so we sort of rely on things like, progress organically. So I think Oath of Silver was my first ever roleplay guild that I ever joined. So I think I just learned to do it that way. So I tend to prefer the things that sort of happen, that aren't scripted, the things that, casual role play that's, dynamic and fluid and things like that. And, events are good and fun and they can help you with character progression. But, I think you need a mix of both to really get something meaningful for your character.
I think you can get unscripted for events as well. I mean, I'll talk quickly about me planning events. I always have a basic idea in mind of how the event's going to go, but
Mm.
I always allow the characters' interaction with it and ways of dealing with things to kind of shape the ending of it and how it overcomes. Basically, I
Mm.
don't ever do too much planning, so it kind
Mm.
of helps also shape their character in a way. Like I don't know,
Exactly.
in my head I must have been thinking, say this character's going to die, but no, they could spare this character and think that he deserves to live, whatever. And that's a big thing right there, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I understand where you're coming from completely.
Um, I do a mixture of both as well. I mean, events, social RP. I'm not recently though, because I've been kind of lazing about, but it's events and
You're building
social.
a village.
Yeah, I have. So it's through those that I've kind of shaped Ursula, for example, who began a positive, bubbly elf, someone who was always enthusiastic about the things they did, always enthusiastic about meeting people, making new friends, adventures, journeying, all that stuff. But through recent events they've become a bit more skeptical through time and a bit more cold shoulder towards the people that they don't know, protective towards the people that she's formed bonds with.
Mm.
It, it's through those events and minor interactions as well that's kind of helped me shape and progress the character. I still don't know what she's going to end up as through the end of the
Yeah,
actual event,
yeah.
but it could be
And that's and
something.
that's and that's the fun of it, isn't it? Like that sort of unpredictability and like that the fact that we need to kind of, react and engage in things that aren't scripted is for me one of the most fun things about anything that happens. It's like this really great moment where you can say, oh, how can I react to this? How is this going to affect my character? And it's like it's fun.
Yeah. Um, let's have a look. What's the difference between doing it as a guild and as solo if you've actually experienced both sides then? Like progressing your character as a solo
Mm.
player without a guild or as a player with a guild. Now personally I have a lot of experience doing it solo. And I'll do an example with I mean Gizlek knows this character, Dempsey Tinkerfuse.
Yep.
She's been in both a guild and solo, mostly solo. She started out as this starving young novice, mage goblin who just wants to sort of like the self who just wants to help others and fight for the horde, all that stuff. But now she's kind of developed through interactions between the guild she was in, between outsiders. She's developed towards a more, I guess she's less for the horde and more for Azeroth, basically.
Mm.
And she's more skeptical about the horde, skeptical about the alliance. She's had her eyes opened, quotation marks, because all our characters will have different perceptive on what they view both these sides as, and that's through solo interactions. I created events personally for solo interactions as well that guilds joined in as well. It helped shape her towards the character she is now. It's a shame
Mm.
she's up on the shelf now, but well, what would you say if you've done it solo or guild wise? Then what would you say the difference there is?
I think guild-wise, you tend to run into risking ignoring your character identity too much. I'm not saying it happens, I'm saying it can happen. And you gotta be really careful to that. The thing about solo versus guild progress is, in my opinion, that it's all personal character progress. And in the event of a guild, you have a group with a common cause, and if your character fits into the guild and subscribes to the cause, they've got a solid character development going that counts both as group development and solo development.
Yeah.
So I personally think it's important to ask yourself where your character wants to go, what your character believes in, what your character's goal is, or what your character's goal is to avoid, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've personally found, I mean, I don't have much experience role playing as like a solo player, not like in a guild. I have sort of like a little bit of solo role play experience from other games, but I'm not gonna use that as an example because I don't know how different it is from World of Warcraft. Um, but I've just found that, you know, being in a guild, it's more of a, the story progression is more of a collaborative effort. So it's like, it's not that you don't have to put as much effort in, but you it's kind of like a cooking pot for people to, you know, bounce ideas around in, and it makes it like quite meaningful. I find that if, you know, a story or a plot line or even an event can, you know, sort of change and grow more than one character. Like I find that more meaningful personally, but that's just a personal opinion. I don't know if other people feel the same way or if that's even the truth.
As a yeah, I mean as
I
a guild.
personally feel the same way because the guild leader does need the encouragement. And
Hmm.
you're not encouraging a guild leader by letting the thing run itself, just letting run off the side. You really
Hmm.
gotta give
Yeah.
back to your guild leader if you're subscribed to a guild.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely.
He or she is a human too.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. Thankfully, we have one of the greatest guild leaders. Um, I hope she comes back.
Already halfway through. I don't think she is.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I guess I'm stuck here with you guys.
I think it can be difficult both sides. I mean, they both have their pros and cons. When it comes to solo development, you have more freedom, but let's say for Horde side, for example, it can be a bit bubbly sometimes, and as a solo player, the guild won't always interact with you because they have their
Mm.
own thing going on, you know,
Mm.
and
Yeah,
you're
I do
left out.
actually. I do have some friends that have tried the whole solo role playing thing and like not and like purposefully stayed away from guilds, and they've routinely told me that sometimes they struggle to find meaningful role play because, you know, guilds tend to be sort of consumed with their own thing and don't really take solo ungilded players as seriously.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just their personal experience. Um, but I
Mine
mean,
is
it
a,
is
mine
something
is
that
a
I've
little
heard
bit
happens.
different. Mine is a little bit different. I've tried the whole solo approach as casual as you would on alliance, and you would usually get involved, etc.
Mm,
Uh, but I find that sort of thing rightfully doesn't often uh, give me the sort of meaningful RP I found on Horde by simply getting into the guild's faces. You just have to interact with not the guild leaders, you have to interact with the characters,
yeah, I suppose
get
so. Hey,
involved, have a say about everything.
yeah.
Maybe even form your own warband whenever they go to RPPP events and just
Mm,
have your custom group
mm.
do
But
stuff.
that's the thing about role play in general, though, is like nothing's going to sort of fall in your lap. Like nothing, like plots aren't
yeah.
going to come to you. You have to be active. You can't be passive. So, I mean, if you're not going out of your way to look for things and to make meaningful contributions, whether you're in a guild or solo, you're not going to get those meaningful interactions.
One could say you find what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's
If
exactly
you're looking
it.
for nothing, you're gonna find nothing.
Exactly.
It takes two to tango, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
Um, the same thing can be said with guilds, though. I mean, as you mentioned before, sometimes guilds can kind of lock you in this area where you can't always interact with other players because you're kind of focusing on something else right now, and it makes you miss out these opportunities on meeting other characters and progressing some sort of like friendship with this character or enemies or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I
It's
suppose they both have their pros and cons.
they both
They
yeah
do,
they
they do.
both have their ups and downs. I like them both personally. I'm very when it comes to me personally, I'm very skeptical when it comes to joining guilds because it's less about the character but more about am I going to be investing time into this guild, you know.
Mm, mm.
Otherwise, I'll tend to go solo and walk around wherever I wish and RP when I wish and get in people's faces as
Yeah.
Gizlek mentioned.
I personally think you should do all that even if you get into a guild,
Yeah, you should.
because what's important when you join a guild is to keep your character's identity. You always have this thing about guilds that they run regular events, regular roleplay, etc. But it's important not to rely on that, not to lean back, not to get lost, but to maintain your own character's identity. And if your character happens to be outgoing, so be it. If the guild doesn't satisfy the need, your character will simply uh, strike out to meet new people. We've had a guildie called Zunghe who did that all the time. People didn't interact with him. Fine, he just struck out, met random guilds, got into their faces, and either pleased them or annoyed them. But it was his character, and
Yeah.
his character does his character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're like you're making people happy or you're making people upset, I mean, you're still getting role play in the end, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's problematic. No.
I mean,
Um,
on an IC basis, not out of
Yeah,
character.
yeah. Obviously,
Yeah.
in an in-character basis, not an out-of-character
And
basis, but that
hopefully
is
everyone
a
can
whole
Yeah.
other can of worms.
put the it's something else to talk about another time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
differentiate basically. Um, I forgot what I was gonna say now.
Oh man, that
Oops.
derailed it completely. God damn it, Grizlek.
I'll just mention my alt quickly since he did do the same thing as Gizlek's member Nasrek. He was if no one interacted with him, he was a bit of a. I want to say he was an asshole, but he was a sort of like lovable asshole, if you know what I mean. As in, he'd get
Oh
in your
yeah,
face, but
yeah.
he'd be
I
joking
know what you
about it.
mean.
He basically just picked on people, but in the sense that he wasn't being mean. He was just making a joke.
Okay.
And it formed
And like,
roleplay basically out of that.
And can I just say, like, okay, so the character I roleplay tends to be quite shy and awkward and things like that, and it's, I think when I first created him, he's my main character. When I first created him, I didn't really think it through because having a character that is shy and awkward and isn't super outgoing, it does have its limitations because you have to think very, very hard to find in-character reasons to go up to strangers. So from someone who roleplays a character like that's perspective, we really do appreciate those nice assholes because it creates roleplay where you couldn't maybe not get involved.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
He'd be the sort to shove you in there, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So those kind
Or
of characters are appreciated.
or if you're going socially awkward, just watch a lot of Seinfeld.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, that's solo and guild wise and how to approach basically. There's various different methods, but that would require a more in-depth conversation about them. We have like 1 hour basically.
Oh, my
Super off topic. How do we think evil RP should be done?
Oh, that's tricky.
I think this goes with character progression and creation even. I think your character should have a motive, obviously, and it should have a way of going about it. Because I've seen a lot of evil RP done in the sense that I'm evil, that's it, basically. I mean, why is your character evil? Did they get abused by other people when they were younger? Did they, find a lust for power that leaves them wanting more, and they go out there and torment people, finding artifacts, all this kind of stuff? Or are
No,
they just
absolutely.
are they
'Cause
just
I mean,
a bad
okay.
egg, basically? Yeah.
Sorry, I keep
Go for
interrupting
it.
you, but obviously, like I'm in a like a mafia-style crime roleplay guild, so there's a lot of I don't want to call them evil characters, but not nice characters in the guild, and I think the most important thing definitely is motivation, and like
Yeah.
a solid in-character reasoning for things. I mean, look, if your character is just evil for the sake of being evil, and that's its motivation, or it's their motivation, then I think that could be a solid character concept as well, as long as it's played well. But I think the most important thing is to, if you're going to be doing something with a character, and that character is evil or, perhaps not doing nice things to other people, then the most important thing is definitely stay in character, make sure that your character has a reason for what they're doing, and also
Even if
the
it's sadistic pleasure.
yeah, exactly, because that's a legitimate enough reason. As long as it's not just for the sake of, doing it because you think it's fun. Like, no. And also, what's also important to consider is if whoever's involved in the situation in character might get hurt or something irreparable might happen to them, to obviously get out of character consent first. Like, you can't. It's bad roleplay practice to be role-playing as an evil character who, just does things kind of all willy-nilly and doesn't make sure that out-of-character relations stay good at the same time.
Yeah. Actually, this topic suits in with the question for the next one, really, type of RP and where the character would suit, basically. So evil RP
Yeah.
is one thing.
I mean, or another instance of evil RP. Now that I think about it, I've been playing some Rise of the Tomb Raider lately, and what you have as an evil character, a villain, if you will, is a fanatic who just kills people to get to a goal, right? And as you progress in the game, you find out that the evil guy was the protagonist's mother's brother,
Yeah.
basically your uncle, and that as a child he had some sort of anxiety, and he didn't know where his life was going, and he thought God had forsaken him. Then his sister carved some symbols into his hands and told him he was chosen by God. And that way he progressively became a religiously evil fanatic. That's something that can also happen. And I think that's good character writing, actually.
It's always cool to have this, I mean, specifically with evil RPs and maybe good role players. I mean, if we're talking about good, I mean good in terms of your hero or whatever. Something that kind of puts you in that path, something specifically that shaped you and throughout another series of events made the character who he is today, or she. And same could be said for the other stuff I have listed here. I mean, criminal as well, military, mercenary, entertainers. It's always cool to have it goes back to the basic description. It's always cool to have this basic idea in mind that kind of helps you sit in these roles, basically. Because you're not going to have like this entertainer character type who juggles torches in a military guild, are you?
Not really, but I have somebody who juggled 47 knives for a bet.
Oh man.
But you see,
They're an assassin guild.
Yeah. You see what I mean there, though.
Yeah.
And
But it was for a bet.
you kind of have to figure out what type of roleplay you kind of want to fit into, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sort of, starts with where, like, when you're first creating your character, like, you should have a general idea of what you want to do with them and like the stories that you want to pursue with them, not like a written out formal idea of exactly how you want your character to progress and what type of roleplay you want to do with them, but like a general idea of what you want out of things. Like, for example, in one of Katie's blog posts, she talks about how if you're not interested in combat roleplay, then don't roll a warrior character or like a particularly combative character. So when you're sort of starting out your creation and you're thinking of ideas of what kind of characters you want, you need to take into consideration the type of roleplay you want as well.
So yeah, you're not going to create a fighter who's basically built just to fight, who lives to fight, and instead just goes and becomes like I don't know, selling shoes or whatever, cobbler.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless
Unless that's what you're intending. Like, if you're intending, I don't know, maybe he's had this big fall from grace and stuff like that, and he was once a great combatant, and he's now reduced to selling shoes. Like, unless that's the sort of arc that you want.
Or he's just retiring.
Yeah, maybe he's just retiring. That's also a perfectly legitimate.
I mean, that's
Because we did
fine.
in our old guild, Fuse knows, we did have this old dwarf who was basically a veteran of the Third War, Second War, etc., etc. And what basically happened was he retired and he decided to run an inn.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I mean, that works. I
that
mean,
sounds pretty
if
good
that's
though.
the type
Yeah.
of roleplay you're looking for, that's fine. But
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
if you're again, if you're creating the character and heading a different direction,
Yeah, yeah.
it kind of conflicts with the idea you had in mind and complicates things for
Yeah,
you,
exactly,
basically.
exactly. That's the premise of it, is like know the direction you go in when you start making your. It doesn't have to be like a perfectly written out map, but as long as you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, honestly, I can't figure out any more to touch on the nose there, really. I mean, we're
Drops mic.
it's pretty much it, really. It's not difficult subject.
Mm.
I'll kind of like wrap it up then. It's not really a difficult subject when you're creating a character. Firstly, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all complete at the start. Because the beautiful thing about roleplay is it can do the development for you as well. I mean, you can create a blank character, try out roleplay, and sort of
Yeah.
figure out the response, the
Yeah.
angle, everything like that from there
Exactly.
right away.
Exactly, and I mean that is the beauty of role. Happen, things change, and it's like you're writing a book, but other people get to write the book with you. So you still get to enjoy that story, but you get extra gratification because you get to read other people's stories too. And it's like, I don't know, I find that really fun. The whole nature of the collaborative nature of roleplay is what makes it so fun, and the fact that things change and nothing is ever completely stagnant is what, keeps you guessing and keeps you coming back for more roleplay.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty much it. I mean, you of course you can take some of the ideas we've mentioned as well, how to actually initiate it, and same thing goes with progress. I mean, guild solo wise, the basic premises of that is basically you have to get in the face of people. I mean, even as a guild or solo, if you want RP, you have to give it as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's a collaborative effort. Give what you get what you give.
I suppose there is one thing we actually didn't touch upon, and that comes towards the ending of the character. And I don't know if any of you have. Well, I know Gizlek has, but I don't know if you have ever kind of come to a point where you figured this will be the perfect ending for my character. This is how they're going to go.
Oh man, I've sort of touched on the idea a couple of times. Like sort of, I don't know, think about what my character will be like in maybe, I don't know, 5 years, whenever I think about maybe perhaps retiring in them in the future. And like I sort of, think about these ideas and maybe, I don't know, I don't really put too much thought into them because things can always change. Like you never know what being in character tomorrow will bring. So, I mean, I think it's fine to sort of have an idea of where you want to get your character before you want them to retire. But I don't know. For me, the goal is to never retire my characters. I want to see where they go forever,
Yeah. I mean, Gizlek probably has something to say about it.
What character deaths?
When your character
Person-
ends, and how it ends, or do you pre-plan it, or do you kind of come to a conclusion when the opportunity arises?
I'm a fan of imperfect ends, and well, they're technically perfect ends, but I'm a fan of ends that aren't as idyllic as usually portrayed in storytelling.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I just like these abrupt ends because they're more tragic.
And almost more realistic. Like none of us get the fairy tale ending in real life, so why would a realistic and believable roleplay character get one?
Because we're role playing in a fairy tale setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you still gotta keep it believable,
Jeez.
Stop ruining my fantasy.
I'm sorry. I don't mean believable like, oh my god, stuff like that. I mean like, I don't know, like I don't know
Like
the
a
right
soul
words for
being
it.
ripped out of a character.
I mean,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's like you need a like good storytelling is being able to write something that you can feel, and it's not superficial and not shallow.
yeah.
And happy
Yeah.
endings are sometimes, for me, I find them shallow. So,
I
you
mean,
know,
they can be deep, but most of them are shallow,
yeah,
I agree.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, you can't use magic. No, no, that's not what I
I
mean.
I've normally killed off characters personally, but there is one character that's kind of still living and out there that I kind of have in my head that he's become a hermit basically. Like he was this disciplinic bruiser goblin, soldier who was a hard ass basically, and he always dreamt of going back to a point where he had this loved one and had kids and all that stuff, but it came to a point when he quote unquote sacrificed himself by dragging this bomb away from a crowd of people. He used it as an opportunity to just escape everything when it got too much, and he kind of just lives out somewhere in the wilderness, by
Oh
himself.
man.
And that's how he's basically a hermit. He just doesn't like people
Mm.
anymore. He he doesn't want that anymore. He just doesn't want to be in the public,
Yeah.
basically.
And what's so great about that? Well, what I think is so great about that ending, it's like yes, it's an ending. Like there's an end to that story arc, but he's still around if you ever get the inclination that you want to bring him back.
Yeah. Now let's talk about character death I had that most people know. I mean, I had a big trial for it as well. Fuse Flare Spark, and she was on trial because of treasonous behavior towards the Horde, basically. And that was a character that was evil as well. She kind of lusted for power and all that stuff. But it came towards the end where, as fairy tales it sounds, a loved one kind of made her open her eyes and see that she's doing bad stuff basically, and she wanted to hand herself in, which she did. She got jailed. She got this whole trial. She got sentenced, and she was looking for retribution. But in the end, what she got was executed basically.
Oh
She
man.
wanted to give back to the Horde and help them out, and make up for the wrong she's done, but it didn't really go that way for her.
Mm. Ooh, that's a good story right there.
And yeah, that character's completely dead now. I mean, I can do probably spooky ghost roleplay because she had some she had a lot of voodoo
Oh
related
my gosh,
items.
suddenly she is a Death Knight. We don't know how, but she
No,
died.
she can't be a Death Knight. She lost her head.
Okay. She can be a floating head.
Yeah, let's do a headless horseman roleplay.
I mean, there's a Darkspear role player who just goes around being a ghost whenever he logs onto the character,
Oh man.
I think I've
and
seen
he's
that.
just a ghost. He died long ago. I think you know him.
I think I've seen that, and I've seen Night of Ghost, and I've seen a Pandaren Ghost. I've seen a few just wondering
Oh my
about.
gosh, what happens in Orgrimmar? That's what I want to know.
But the ending doesn't always have to be satisfying, and for me, it tends to be
Mm.
sporadic. It tends to, if it comes to me and I see that this is no, this will be like the end of the line for my character, I'll take it. I mean,
Mm.
I know my characters aren't
Yeah.
going to last forever because I personally like to variate between the characters I make and give them a proper ending, proper
Yeah.
beginning, proper progression, all that stuff.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. I mean, I suppose it's if you can see your character's story arc, coming to a close and things are um, sort of like, wrapping up and stuff. There's no use in like, I don't know, forcing it to carry on because then that dilutes your character as well. Like, there's no use in like kicking a dead horse or whatever they say. Um, so I suppose that's a good way to look at it. I don't know. I think I just with my main characters, like the storylines he's going through, the plot points he's dealing with at the moment are sort of because I haven't actually been role playing for all that long. I think I've barely been in my guild for 2 years. So his are still in completely full swing. So that's probably why I'm of the mind still that I don't ever want it to end. But I feel that perhaps, later down the line when things do seem like they could come to a close, I'm going to take that opportunity.
Yeah.
But just not. I don't want to think about it now because now the plots are juicy, my friend.
That's fair. I mean, everyone has a different way to go about it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Um, alright. After this dungeon, we'll meet up somewhere where will be an easy place for us to meet up Alliance and Horde. Ratchet, I suppose. Ratchet should
Oh
be
my
easy enough.
gosh.
Right, it should be easy enough.
And we'll show off our whatever we collected, try put it together and make up a little background for it.
I may or may not have broken the rules or
Did-
bent them.
Did you go to Orcs now?
I have literally just begun and finished my transmog.
Look,
Oh my gosh, that is not fair. Hold on.
I'll allow it since I haven't really had any luck finding stuff, but I'm just gonna have to make up what I'm wearing, as in like the items in my bag.
I may have forgotten about this challenge until about 3 seconds ago.
You're going to hate me for what I've created.
Alright, we'll meet up in Ratchet, but as we're closing off, I'm gonna allow Gizlek to mention again the events he has planned and put in a little shout out for, was it Serpent Sisterhood, right? If you're still
Sisterhood
running
of the Serpent?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we're a brief hiatus, but we're going to start up with the guild again in a couple of days. And it's basically a sisterhood of just assassins. That's the baseline concept. They pick and choose whichever clients basically they feel they can work with. And it's usually clients that have a lot of funds. So that they don't have to worry about smaller jobs.
Yeah.
And the main point about the guild it is and will be the social interactions. There will be a specific day for either training or events if there are any clients hiring us. And another day is where we just social. We'll have social challenges on occasion, like figure out more about this guy or persuade this character to do this and that. Social challenges like that.
Yeah.
And it's mostly just going to be that social roleplay by an Assassin's Guild. There you have it.
Alright, what were the events you mentioned again? Grim Gully, was it that up again? Celestial Tournament?
The Grimy Galley, we're not even sure if it's still going to be called that.
Okay.
Or what the event format is going to be, but it's very likely going to be very similar to that underground arena battle. We just have to set a date and announcement for it in the first place. I'm not even a decision maker for that, but I do support it strongly. In terms of the Urban Ring meetings, we're probably going to hold the next one in the Heart of Azeroth in July. Date's still pending. And June 16th, Temple of the Jade Serpent. Small tournament of Pandaren arts. Monks, basically. There'll be some modifiers that negatively affect people who cannot use Chi. But you can find out more about that in the event page itself. It's called the Celestial Tournaments. You can find it on the Argent archives. And I think that's currently it. Yeah, that's all you need to know.
Lorenthas, would you like to talk a bit about Silver Oath? I always forget the name wrong. I know it's
Oath
something
of Silver.
Oath of Silver.
Oath of Silver, that's
Oath
it.
of Silver. Okay, yeah, so we've actually, okay, like I said, I mean, I've barely been in the guild for 2 years, so I don't know, all the history, but the thing is, Oath has been around for, I don't know, close to 5 years. I think we've kind of had dips in activity during then, but it's never, fully stopped. And we're actually, what's great is we're picking up activity again, and we operate mainly out of Silver Moon City. The whole sort of premise of the guild is the fact that it's a sort of a mafia, like I've said this so many times, but it's a mafia style criminal guild. It kind of uses the Wayfarer's Rest? Yeah, Wayfarer's Rest as their sort of central location to like run legitimate business as like a guise for something to like cover over the criminal aspect of it, and also our GM and also, the person who owns the businesses in character is Theolin, and he's also the seneschal of. So it's kind of the whole premise of the guild is uh, sort of under the table crime and very blue collar, that kind of thing. And there's also a whole lot of other stuff going on as well with regards to um, some dodgier, just quote unquote crime stuff. But I think the most exciting thing is, like I said, we're picking up activity again and we're recruiting again. We haven't done that for quite a while, and we're like active seeking out new members and looking at plot points and things like that, which is really fun because it's, we're getting a lot of like meaningful stuff and meaningful things from other people, and also trying to give other people meaningful stories as well by we're also, I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but we're hosting a tavern night, which is essentially a sort of like really free form event for anyone to sort of come and join. And it's just in Wayfarer's Rest from about, official hours are from 10 p.m. server to 12 p.m. server on Wednesdays. And it's just the employees of Mr. Theolin Nordenel, tend the bar and serve customers, and it's just like a normal bartending event thing where anyone's welcome to join and come and hang out and maybe, talk and chat, and it's a great way to meet new people and sort of, talk to people you maybe wouldn't have normally had a chance to speak to in character. And yeah, there you go. That's what we're basically doing. We're running some guild plots themselves, which are sort of long, ongoing things that aren't, that are just, our main focus is on things that are slow and organically done and not very, we don't do a lot of scripted stuff. It's very sort of free form with Oath of Silver. And it's working, I guess, because, things are picking up.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm standing outside Ratchet Bank. If you want to show
Oh gosh,
off what you got.
I haven't even done a TRP for the character.
Doesn't matter. I probably won't be able to see it, so you can just kind of mention it.
Okay, I'll just make up stuff. It's fine.
Well, shows your what's it called?
What if my character concept is that there is no character?
I mean, they could just be a hobo.
Yep.
Whilst I wait for them to come, as always, you can subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me here on Twitch. I mean, you can subscribe here on Twitch as well, but that's up to you. If you want to continuously to support the stream and support the direction it's going, you can always join the Discord. Give me something, subjects you want to see me talking about, guests you want to see on from Argent Dawn. It's pretty simple as that, really. This video will be uploaded onto YouTube, archived, so people can actually watch it. That's it, really. I mean, I'll put up the events, I'll put up both guilds on the forum, so people can check them out. Otherwise, we're pretty much wrapped up. We're just going to show off these last transmogs, waiting for them to arrive.
Let's hope I remember where Ratchet is.
It's on Kalimdor.
Kalimdor Barrens.
Okay. So taking the portal to Orgrimmar was a good idea.
Yep.
I should hope so, yes.
It's a shame Feeling couldn't be here with us, but we had a good guest here in her place as well.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I can recommend both guilds run by Gizlek and Feeling. Interaction-wise, it's always been great.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you.
I don't think they think. I think Feeling actually liked my character out of character, but I can't remember if I was a joke to her, I see. Because
honestly, no one ever knows what the Theolin is.
Yeah.
He's terrifying. Okay.
So
Ratchet, Nolan Barons.
So was Nessa from Gizlek's experience. Nessa was very in-your-face goblin, and if she didn't get paid, for example, she'd bust a kneecap just to get that money,
Oh my
basically.
gosh.
That sort of
Oh my
goblin.
gosh. That's incredible.
Because I think I remember we did an event in the Barrens actually, where the NPC wouldn't pay, so Nessa kind of grabbed him by the collar and just started shaking him down.
Oh man, that's wonderful.
Yeah, my orc. Last she wanted something from a Tor and she skinned her alive.
Yeah. So it's
Oh
nice to
no.
have these like, I guess jerk characters are always nice to have because they
Mm,
kind of shake up the atmosphere in the room. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Nasrek was a favorite orc of mine to roleplay.
I mean, yeah.
Although there wasn't a joke character. My joke character was rather I had this dwarven death knight
Yeah.
who would make threats.
Yeah.
And if he didn't get his way, the threats would become literal reality. So if he says he's going to bust some kneecaps off, say, to remain harmless, he's going to bust some kneecaps off. If he's going to say, make somebody eat their own foot, it's going to be a grotesque time if
Oh
they
man.
don't follow suit with his demands.
You see, that's the thing. Like, what I love so much about playing my characters, because I'm in a crime guild. Of course, there's it's full of hardened criminals. Listen to me.
Criminals.
Criminals and stuff like that. And obviously, I mean, Theo. So, I mean, the character I play is completely in over his head. Like, he is. Well, I mean, it's a morally gray area, but he's not particularly bad, and he's not particularly ruthless or brutal or anything like that. He's actually quite a gentle soul, but he's still got that like hectic ambition to him, which is fun because it's like, it's oh gosh, is that you, Erica?
Yeah.
Garcia. Oh man, don't look at me. I'm gonna hide in a bush. What's so fun for me is that it sort of flips the whole idea of a criminal on its head, and it's like it's a nice sort of dynamic to see. Like for me personally, is to see like how my own particularly hardened or brutal or violent or things like that like interact with people who are, because he's in that sort of world and like he's immersed himself in that lifestyle, yet he's still trying to like maintain that, I don't want to call it innocence, but that's it's conflict, good, evil, that kind of thing.
I'm sorry,
Oh
I just
gosh.
have to look at this.
Conviction.
uh,
Oh man, that's beautiful. I haven't made a TRP. Hold on, give me a second.
on that quickly on that I have a Nessa brought a character along who kind of went into a foul play as well. A peon, I think Gizlek remembers Gritmore, right?
Grimoire?
Gritmore, yeah, where Nessa kind of dragged him
Oh,
around.
Grimoire! Yeah, definitely.
I mean, at one point I think, was it you who gave him the gun? Or was it her? Like, I remember her sitting on top of his back and him just firing the gun. It was pretty, I like that interaction when you have this sort of sidekick sort of thing. Like, you have that
Especially
person.
one who can use a gun. I had a hunter whose monkey once shot a Corcron with a gun.
Did it know it was shooting the gun, or was it just pulling the trigger?
Nobody knows, but everybody revered the monkey after that.
I like those sidekick dynamics.
People were conspiring that the monkey was the real figurehead behind the freelancers.
I mean, oh, it was that I forgot what you named him.
I actually never gave him a name, and the monkey eventually died.
Rip Monkey.
Rip monkey.
Are you
Will be
doing okay in that bush?
You will be remembered.
No, I'm just ignore me. Ignore me.
I'm looking at you right now.
Don't inspect me whatsoever. Nothing to see here. This is fine.
I like those.
Never tell somebody not to expect you. Then they're gonna do it.
I like those partnered concepts really. I mean,
Oh gosh,
if
hold on.
it works better if your characters just click immediately, basically. I mean, I always wanted to do this concept with my friends, where it's just two scam artists like goblins, basically, just going around from city to city, putting up these dodgy games, cards you wouldn't win, dice you wouldn't win, nothing like that. Alright, I'll let Gizlek go first and introduce his orc.
Yeah.
This is the confectioner. He's a very busy orc. And the reason he's not wearing anything is because it's a savannah. Give him a break.
I was gonna say he's too busy to put clothes on.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice he was naked. That's beautiful.
What
The
about
naked chef, if you will.
what about your pitchfork wielding Nightborn here?
Okay, so this is a nameless nobody, and he has made his way to Kalimdor from Suramar after the whole debacle that happened there. And he is not particularly good at anything except digging up other people's plants. So he looks for any farm he can find, and he sneakily digs up all their fruits and vegetables and puts them in these little pouches, and then tries to sell them to people to make money.
So he's a farmer thief?
He's essentially a
I guess you could say he's farming.
yes.
Alright.
And he has no name because he can't remember.
This character here used to be a sentinel, became too damaged, leg, can't walk properly. It means can't fight properly. Since then she's become a barkeep, settled down, has a few children, enjoys singing, likes to read books. That's pretty much it. She progresses on day by day, just listening to other sentinel stories on their about the battlefield and whatever scouting they've done, serving them drinks. Yes,
I feel like you put way more effort into it than I did.
This is me improvising. I always
Oh
improvise.
man, you're good at that. You're good at that. I can.
I'll tell you.
No wonder I'm an actual role player.
Before I close off on the thing of improvising, because I guess you can use it for character progression as well. It's always good to have just these quick. First thing that comes to mind, respond like that, because this character specifically has she keeps memories in a book that she draws basically. So she draws out the memories she had. So she was at the Siege of Orgrimmar, she draws out a scenery there and puts it there, and then she can kind of talk about it. I had someone kind of make up the sceneries and her kind of tell a story about it. Like for example, a cactus and a human. And my character just kind of immediately clicked. It was like, oh, this human was drunk, and started proposing to this cactus, basically.
I briefly used to run a tavern gig in the, what's it? Broken Keel. Yes, the Broken Keel. That's it. The tavern right over there in Rachit. And I used to run using this goblin chef, who has this basically extravagant history of him being a cook on a sailor ship, and he has all these adventures in the trade wars back then, where goblins would sabotage each other's ship or raid them or just hire pirates to do it for them. And he had a tale for every single guest, every single customer. He would sit down on occasion when he's not cooking, just pull up a drink and talk about his olden sailor days.
Oh, that's incredible.
That was a nice time. But I discontinued it eventually because they decided to undo the cross-realm groups thing.
Alright. I mean, that's it. I mean, we've gone 20 minutes over, but I mean, it's not that much either way. Thank you again to both of you coming.
Thanks for having me.
I'll put up both their guilds, I'll put up the event mentioned. That's pretty much it this week. Next week we should have Anya coming in, who is going to be the co-host for AD Talks from now on. Hopefully you'll like their presence here. Thanks again. Follow, subscribe, go on YouTube if you want to subscribe there as well. I'll be uploading video soon. I'll share it on Discord as well for others if you didn't, catch this live. See you for now.
Thanks for having me. See ya.